Okay, that was disturbing.
Captain America, it's been a long time.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, it definitely looks like that there's some trouble a-brewing. Anyways, welcome back, true believers and all you merry Marvelites, to another very exciting Avengers project-related video. And as you can tell from that dastardly intro, today we are actually going to be talking about the top 5 villains that definitely should appear within Marvel's Avengers. Now, to be frank, this is actually quite a very interesting topic to discuss, considering how the developers of the game did say that there will be ever-escalating threats that will be added into the game for years to come. So alongside of knowing that we will be able to play as even more Marvel superheroes and explore even more regions within the Marvel universe down the line, we will also be able to apparently fight even more threats, enemies, and possibly even more major villains once the game fully ships on May 15th, 2020. Now, this both thoroughly excites me and concerns me all at the same time. On one hand, we do have a game which will be continuously updated for people who never want to stop playing it, but on the other hand, I don't know how much content will actually be involved within the base game. If Crystal Square, Marvel, and Eidos are planning to add a lot more content down the line within future years, I don't know how much content within the game is actually going to be added on its day one release. This doesn't just relate to the co-op aspects of the game where you can team up with a bunch of your friends, but also relating to what the main story of the game is going to involve itself. Given what we have right now, Taskmaster and Abomination are 2 confirmed villains that will be added within the overall world of Marvel's Avengers. However, even though this aspect of the game will most likely be kept a secret until it's actually released, we don't know who the actual main villain of the narrative is going to be. And in case you missed it, I did do a video a while back discussing who the main villain of the game could possibly be, which I will leave as a link in the description below. But for this video, I'm mainly going to list off which specific Marvel villains would work perfectly within the overall world of Marvel's Avengers. And to make things a bit more interesting, I am going to list only one villain per that specific Avenger within the team. So for example, even though Taskmaster is mainly a villain of the Avengers in general, we mainly see him fight Black Widow on the Golden Gate Bridge during the A-Day demo. And after seeing how eventful the Black Widow vs. Taskmaster boss fight was, it makes me that much more curious to see how the other boss fights will handle in comparison. But of course, none of the boss fights within the game will hold as much impact unless the villain themselves does have a very interesting role within the story. And while I'm not entirely sure whether or not he's going to be the main villain of this game or not, I definitely believe he's going to provide a huge challenge against the main super soldier himself of Captain America. This doesn't just relate to his physical capabilities, but also the massive amounts of psychological warfare that he holds against Steve Rogers as well. And as you saw from the intro and the thumbnail, I'm mainly referring to the one and only Baron Zemo. Knowing for almost a fact that Captain America is surely not dead within Marvel's Avengers, I definitely think one possibility as to what happened to him is that he was actually captured by Hydra. We do know that Taskmaster was hired by someone to take out the Avengers and possibly try and steal the Terrigen reactor on the Chimera helicarrier. While that may have been a part of the official plan that was at hand, I do believe one of the main goals that was going on during A-Day is to try and apprehend Captain America himself. And once again, knowing that there will in fact be ever-escalating threats to take out within this game and the multitude of its years that will be added within its content, I definitely can see Hydra being featured as an enemy faction to take down. And even though some people consider Red Skull to be the one true arch-nemesis of Captain America, I do think Baron Zemo does pose a huge threat to him and the other Avengers as a whole. And after seeing how wonderfully he was portrayed within the Avengers cartoon of Earth's Mightiest Heroes, I really do hope that if he is in the game, that Crystal, Marvel, Square, and Eidos can definitely make him even better than what he already was previously portrayed. So next up on the list is a threat that directly relates to the God of Thunder himself of Thor, and mainly one of the biggest threats that the Avengers have ever faced. Not only that, but I also believe that if they were to actually include him within this game's universe, it would also directly confirm another region's existence with that of Asgard, and also hopefully a bunch of other enemies that differ from the standard human fodder. Although, knowing how popular this character was within the MCU, and specifically within the first Avengers movie in 2012, it is going to be a bit hard to imagine anyone else other than Tom Hiddleston actually filling in the shoes of this role. And as you've probably all guessed by now, I'm mainly referring to the God of Mischief himself of Loki. So in case you were unaware as to the background history of this version of the Avengers, the developers did say that they have in fact been a team for quite a while now and are are very experienced as to what they do. However, we're not entirely sure as to which specific villain or event actually made them band together in the first place within this game's world. And while I'm sure that there will be a load of story beats within the game that will reference past events that have happened for this version of the Avengers in this game's story, it would be very interesting to see if they have fought Loki in the past before. And besides all that, there is a lot of cool narrative aspects that they could dive into with Thor and Loki's relationship, and possibly some very cool boss fight mechanics that we could see as well. And revolving around most recent events within the Marvel Games realm, Loki was featured within Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, which did have a very interesting perspective with his take in the game's story. But seeing how Marvel's Avengers is going to be a fully AAA experience, it's going to be very interesting to see how Loki could be handled in a game like this. And if that also means that we could possibly take down enemies like that of the Chitauri or Frost Giants, I would just love to see them be featured in this game's world regardless. So as we go into the middle of this list, actually relates to one of the villains relating to the Armored Avenger himself, with that of Iron Man. Now there are in fact a lot of Iron Man enemies to choose from, but seeing how Tony is in fact in a depression rut after the events of A-Day, I do believe that there is one enemy that could stand out amongst the others in this case. Whatever the case may be, there's going to have to be something pretty darn big to convince Tony to come back and join the Avengers. And while the major threats of Baron Zemo and Loki could definitely get the job done, I do believe one villain that could definitely convince Tony to come back out of his rut is none other than that of the Mandarin. The Mandarin is literally the pure embodiment of everything that Tony Stark fully opposes and even fears, and if the Makluan rings along with the Mandarin actually turn up within this game's story, it would just be absolutely crazy. Now there could possibly be a story point where the Avengers themselves have to find the 10 rings before the Mandarin can actually get his hands on them in order to save the world. Sadly, because of the recent and massive popularity of the Infinity Stones within the MCU, it may be a bit too similar of a plot to include within this game. Still, the Mandarin is literally Iron Man's arch nemesis within the overall world of the Marvel Universe, so I really do hope that he at least exists within this game's world one way or another. And knowing that the Avengers within this game's story have faced off against some big threats within the past, I really do hope that the Mandarin is one of them. Now as we draw closer to the end of this list, revolves around a villain that relates to the strongest Avenger, with that of the Incredible Hulk. Now for me personally, since we already do have Abomination within this game, I'm very much looking to a bare knuckle brawl between the Hulk and Abomination, just like what we got within Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction. But out of all the many foes that Hulk does have, especially where we did see a small appearance of him within the very end of the Incredible Hulk movie all the way back in 2008, I have been dying to actually fight him in a video game ever since. Now granted, we did actually manage to fight this particular villain within the 2003 Hulk movie tie-in game, but I don't think it would be as impactful as it could be within a AAA game. Not to mention that the main fight that continuously stands the test of time is Brains versus Brawn, and in this case, I would absolutely love to see the Hulk take on the one and only Leader. Given that the Abomination already exists within this game's world, I would definitely expect another big heavy hitter within Hulk's villain roster like that of Leader to somehow pop up in one way or another. And out of all the main villains that do relate to the Avengers, I could definitely see the Leader being a massive threat. While he may not be able to do too much within the fighting department, he could easily outsmart every Avenger if he wanted to, especially if he's at his best. Plus, we do know that Bruce Banner after A-Day never wants to turn into the Hulk again, given how many lives were taken after that tragedy, so I could see the Leader actually using that to his advantage. And because of this particular situation, I would actually like to see how Bruce Banner would handle it instead of just turning into the Hulk and punching him right in the face. Because if anything, I do believe a battle of the brains would be very interesting to see compared to that of the battle of the brawn. But with all of that in mind, I definitely believe the Leader would be a worthy addition to add within the overall villain roster of Marvel's Avengers. However, none of them really stack up in my opinion to who I believe would not only be a great addition to the overall villain cast, but also who could potentially be the main villain of the entire game. Even though the MCU did portray him in a different way compared to that of the comics, they did really capture the overall essence as to who he really is. And knowing that one of the other Avengers members with that of Ant-Man is going to be added to the main roster supposedly at launch, I could definitely see this villain's origin coming from him instead of that of Tony Stark. And if you're mainly aware from his origin within the comics, you'll know that I'm mainly talking about the one and only Ultron. It would be clear as day to see Ultron featured within this game not only as a boss down the line, but also to fight off his multitude of enemies for the other Avengers to take on with that of his Ultron bots. Considering how many foes the Avengers have fought within their multitude of comics with that of humans, aliens, and robots, I could easily see them implementing Ultron within this game's universe. The only downside I could see Ultron possibly not appearing within this game is because of him being the main villain within Marvel Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite and his recent involvement within Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. But for me personally, I've always been a big fan of Ultron and how he deals with the Avengers as a team and trying to take them apart one by one. And while the plot of the game might be a bit cliche, if he does turn out to be the main villain of him just trying to recreate the entire world to fit his own image, I still think him being featured in this game would be a very cool thing to say the least. But in the end, there are literally thousands of villains to choose from within the overall world of Marvel and the entire universe that relates to the Avengers, so I could see them possibly either adding one, if not any, or all of these foes in the final game at launch or down the line. So knowing that this game will in fact be updated for years to come gives me a whole lot of confidence that we will see a huge variety of villains within this overall game. And hopefully with the promise of new heroes and regions being added to Marvel's Avengers also potentially means new villains being added as well. Still, only time will tell, but I for one just can't wait to see what Crystal, Square, Marvel, and Eidos actually have in store. And with all that said, everyone, that's the video I have for you today, and please let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. What do you think of my top 5 list of villains that we should see within Marvel's Avengers, and please let me know your personal top 5 picks as well. For me personally, even though I do like all of these villains within this list, I really do want to see how Crystal could interpret Baron Zemo within this game's story. I truly do think that he is one of the biggest challenges that Captain America has ever faced and can even go toe-to-toe with some of the other Avengers. So if it ends up turning out that he's not just a villain within this game, but the main villain of the entire ordeal, I would actually be very surprised and happy to see that be played out. But no matter who ends up actually being featured within this game's villainous cast, I'm just very excited to see who they're going to be. And until next time, everybody, thank you all so much for watching, stay merry Marvelites, and peace out.
After all these years, is revenge on me really that important to you? Yes. But now, Captain, I've been promised the world, and you will live just long enough to see me have it.